There is something that nobody tells you when you are young. Nobody sits you down and explains that the pain you are absorbing right now, the tension in the house, the silence at the dinner table, the words that were said too loudly, or the love that was never said at all, nobody tells you that your body is recording all of it, that your nervous system is taking notes, that the child you are right now is building an entire architecture of survival based on what is happening in these rooms, with these people, in these years that you will one day look back on and call your childhood. Nobody tells you that the strategies you are developing right now to stay safe, to stay loved, to stay connected to the people you cannot survive without, that those strategies will one day become the walls of a prison you cannot see. That what saves you at 7 will confuse you at 35. That the self you are building to get through this will one day need to be gently, courageously dismantled, so that the self underneath the one that existed before the world told you who to be can finally have room to breathe. Gabor Mate spent his entire career sitting with this truth. In hospital rooms and addiction clinics and lecture halls and therapy offices, he sat with human beings who were suffering in ways that medicine could name but could not fully explain. And what he found again and again underneath every diagnosis and every destructive pattern and every body that had turned against itself was a story, a human story, a story that almost always began the same way, not with weakness, not with disorder, not with something fundamentally wrong with the person sitting across from him, but with a child who had learned very early and very thoroughly that some parts of them were acceptable and some parts were not. A child who had discovered, through the ordinary and sometimes devastating curriculum of growing up, that in order to keep the love they needed to survive, they would have to leave certain things behind. Their anger, their sadness, their neediness, their sensitivity, their authentic responses to a world that was sometimes overwhelming and sometimes painful and sometimes simply too much. And so they left those things behind. They got very good at it. They became in many cases the strong one, the capable one, the one who never complained, the one who was always there for others, the one who kept everything together even when everything inside them was quietly, invisibly falling apart, and the world rewarded them for it. The world gave them approval and admiration and the particular comfort of being needed. And that reward felt like love. It felt like safety. It felt like proof that the strategy was working, until the body said otherwise. Gabor Mate's most important clinical observation, the one that he returned to throughout his entire career, in every book, in every lecture, in every conversation that mattered, was this: the separation of mind and body that modern medicine is built upon is not just a philosophical error. It is a medical error, one that costs people their health, their relationships, their sense of what is possible for them, and sometimes their lives, because the body does not separate what the mind refuses. The body does not file away the unexpressed grief in a place where it cannot cause damage. The body does not protect itself from the consequences of a lifetime of self-abandonment, simply because the self that was abandoned was smiling while it happened. The body keeps the score. Every time you swallowed your anger to keep the peace, your body was there. Every time you said yes, when every cell in you was screaming no, your body was listening. Every time you betrayed your own truth to maintain a connection that required your inauthenticity as the price of admission, your body registered the transaction, and it responded. It responded the way bodies respond to chronic stress, to chronic suppression, to chronic disconnection from the self, with inflammation, with autoimmune conditions, with depression and anxiety, and the particular exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from being someone other than who you actually are for too long. This is not a metaphor. Gabor Mate was not speaking poetically when he said that the body is the place where the biography becomes the biology. He was describing a clinical reality that he had watched unfold in patient after patient, condition after condition, decade after decade. The story of your life is written in your body, and the chapters that were never allowed to be spoken out loud are often the ones that eventually speak the loudest, in the language of symptoms, of illness, of a physical reality that demands to be heard even when the person living inside it has spent a lifetime learning not to listen. Now, here is where it becomes personal. Here is where this stops being about Gabor Mate's patients and starts being about you. Because if you are watching this, it is not by accident. Nothing about the moment you found this video, the state you were in when you pressed play, the particular ache that has been living somewhere in your chest or your stomach or the back of your throat for longer than you can remember. None of that is accidental. Something in you was looking for this. Something in you already knows that the way you have been living, the performing and the managing and the holding together and the helping everyone else while quietly hemorrhaging, inside something in you already knows that it is not sustainable, that it was never sustainable, that the bill for all of it has been accumulating for years and the body is beginning to present it. So let us talk about what actually heals, not what manages, not what copes, not what gets you through the week with enough functioning left over to get through the next one. What actually at the root heals. Gabor Mate said that the first step is the one that most people find the hardest, not because it is complicated, but because it requires something that many of us were specifically trained not to do. It requires compassionate curiosity toward yourself, not judgment, not the relentless self-interrogation of a person who has decided that the problem is their own fundamental inadequacy, not the performance of self-awareness that looks like insight, but is actually just shame wearing a more sophisticated costume. Compassionate curiosity. The same quality you would bring to a child who is sitting in front of you, clearly in pain, clearly frightened, clearly carrying something too heavy for their small body to hold. You would not diagnose that child. You would not tell them to think more positively. You would not hand them a prescription and send them back into the world. You would lean toward them. You would ask what happened. You would make it safe, for perhaps the first time, for them to tell the truth about what they are carrying. That child is inside you. That child has always been inside you. And for most of your adult life, in all likelihood, you have been doing to that child exactly what was done to them in the first place. Telling them to be quiet, telling them to be stronger, telling them that what they feel is too much, that what they need is unreasonable, that the safest thing they can do is learn to need less. The healing begins when that changes, when you turn toward rather than away, when you get curious rather than critical, when you ask for the first time with genuine openness, not what is wrong with you, but what happened to you, and what that child, that original self, that uncorrupted core of you that existed before the world began its work of shaping you into something more manageable, what that self has been trying to tell you all along. Gabor Mate spoke often about authenticity, not authenticity as a lifestyle brand, not authenticity as the performance of rawness, but authenticity in its most clinical, most precise sense. The alignment between what you feel and what you express, between what you need and what you allow yourself to ask for, between who you actually are and the version of yourself you present to the world in order to remain safe, accepted, and loved. That alignment, or the loss of it, is, in Gabor Mate's understanding, one of the foundational causes of human suffering. Not the only cause, but a central one. Because the moment we begin to suppress our authentic responses to life, and for many of us, that moment came very early, before we had language for what was happening, before we had any choice in the matter from that moment forward. We are living a divided life, a life in which the inner and outer selves are running on different tracks, pulling in different directions, expending enormous energy simply maintaining the gap between them. And that gap has a cost. The body pays it. The relationships pay it. The sense of meaning and purpose pays it. The capacity for genuine joy, not performed happiness, not the relief of distraction, but actual deep cellular gladness that pays it too. Now here is what Gabor Mate also said, And this is important. This is perhaps the most important thing, because without it, everything else becomes just another reason to feel guilty about being human. None of this was your fault. The suppression was not a character flaw, it was an adaptation. It was the most intelligent thing a child could do in a situation where expressing their full authentic self felt dangerous, where the cost of being real was the withdrawal of love or approval or safety from the people they could not survive without. The child did not choose to abandon themselves. The child chose to survive, and in the context they were in, at the age they were, with the resources they had, that was the right choice, the only choice. But you are not that child anymore. And the context has changed. And what was once the most intelligent adaptation available to you has become, in the life you are living now, the very thing that is keeping you from the life you were actually meant to live. This is the paradox at the heart of all healing. The thing that saved you is the thing that is now limiting you. The armor that protected you has become the prison, and taking it off is terrifying, because the nervous system that learned to wear it does not know, at a cellular level, that the danger has passed, does not know that the person you are now, in this body, in this life, with this accumulated experience, that this person is capable of surviving things the child was not, that this person can handle the feelings the child could not afford to have. The nervous system needs to be taught that. Slowly, compassionately, repeatedly. This is why healing is not an event. It is not a breakthrough in a therapy session, though breakthroughs happen. It is not a book you read or a video you watch, though books and videos can point toward the door. Healing is a practice. It is the daily, imperfect, courageous practice of choosing yourself, of choosing truth over performance, of choosing presence over management, of choosing again and again to bring the parts of you that have been living in shadow into the light of your own compassionate attention. And here is what happens when you do that. Here is what Gabor Mate watched happen in people who did the real work, who went all the way in rather than managing the surface. The change that happens is not just personal, it is relational, it is generational. It is, in the truest sense of the word, political. Because when you heal, you stop passing the wound forward. You stop relating to your children from the unmet needs of your own childhood. You stop choosing partners who confirm your oldest beliefs about your own unworthiness. You stop building friendships around the economy of mutual wounding. You stop showing up in the world as a person whose unprocessed pain is quietly, invisibly shaping every interaction, every decision, every relationship you will ever have. You become, instead, a source, not of perfection. Healing does not produce perfect people. It produces real ones. People who can be present. People who can tolerate the full range of human feeling without needing to escape it. People who can sit with another person in their pain without needing to fix it, minimize it, or redirect it back toward their own unmet needs. People who have enough inner ground to actually show up for someone else without disappearing in the process. That is the gift. That is the real gift. Not the healed person as an end in themselves. Though you deserve healing for its own sake, for no other reason than that you are a human being who has suffered, and suffering deserves a response. But the healed person is something that the world is profoundly, desperately short of. We are living in a world that is largely run by unhealed people, by people making decisions from their wounds, by people whose unprocessed fear is expressed as control, whose unprocessed grief is expressed as rage, whose unprocessed shame is expressed as the need to diminish others. This is not a political statement, it is a psychological one, and Gabor Mate made it clearly and consistently throughout his entire career. The healing of individuals is not separate from the healing of the world. It is the mechanism by which the world heals. One nervous system at a time, one family at a time, one generation deciding, perhaps for the first time in a very long line of people who never had the chance or the language or the permission, one generation deciding that the wound stops here. You might be that generation. You might be that person. The one who turns toward rather than away. The one who asks what happened rather than what is wrong. The one who chooses, with full knowledge of how frightening it is and how long it will take and how imperfect the process will be, who chooses healing anyway, not for a reward, not for applause, not because it will make everything easier, because in the short term, real healing often makes things harder. The feelings that surface when you stop suppressing them are not comfortable. The relationships that shift when you stop abandoning yourself are not always the shifts you would have chosen. The version of your life that begins to take shape when you start living from authenticity rather than adaptation can look very different from the life you had planned. But it is yours. For perhaps the first time, it is actually yours. Gabor Mate said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who you were told to be, not who you learned to be in order to survive, not the performance or the armor or the strategy or the role, but the actual self, the one that was there before all of it, the one that has been waiting with extraordinary patience through all of the years of suppression and survival and self-betrayal, waiting for you to come back for it. That self is still there. It has always been there. No amount of wounding has been able to destroy it, though the wounding tried. No amount of suppression has been able to extinguish it, though the suppression was thorough and early and lasted a very long time. It is waiting, right now. As you watch this, it is waiting. In the place in your body where you feel things before your mind has a chance to explain them away. In the longing that surfaces sometimes when you are alone and quiet and not performing for anyone. In the grief that has no name, the anger that has no target, the joy that feels almost dangerous when it arrives, because something in you is still not sure it is allowed. That is where the healing begins. Not in a technique, not in a protocol, in the turning toward, in the choice to take seriously for the first time, or perhaps the 100th time, the inner life of the person you have been living inside all along. You were never meant to pass the wound forward. You were always meant to be the one who finally put it down. And the world, your children, your relationships, your community, the future that is being quietly shaped right now by the inner lives of the people living in the present, the world has been waiting for that version of you, not the performed version, not the managed version, not the version that holds everything together while quietly falling apart, the healed version, the real version, the version that chose, against all the training and all the fear and all the deeply ingrained belief that your own needs were too much and your own truth was too dangerous and your own healing was a luxury you could not afford. The version that chose healing anyway. Drop 777 inches the comments if this reached something real in you tonight. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are.